Hey guys, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Today is going to be a bit of a different video. Um, as you can tell from the picture that I posted in the community page, I am at a new company. This was actually my first week with this new company, and it's been very interesting so far. This company is there's a lot of similarities between this company and the previous company, but there's a lot of differences too, and it's taking a little bit of getting used to. I think in some ways I was spoiled with the other company, and then in some ways with this company there's a lot of greater benefits. So I came on one to, of course, let you guys know that yes, I am with another company, and I wanted to kind of explain to you what happened with this previous company. I don't have anything negative to say about this company overall. I still think it's a great company. I still think it's a great starter company for anyone. And I never in any of my videos mentioned the name of the company. And that was for different reasons. One, because the company had some restrictions. They didn't allow certain things. They were okay with me videoing and sharing pictures and all that kind of stuff, but some things they didn't allow. And I don't know if it's because they didn't want any negativity about the company getting out there. They always want to maintain this impression that they're a great company to work for. So anything that any employee or former employee has to say about them that may not paint them in a great light, they're very on top of that. And I think one of the things I had said to you guys when I was researching this company along with all of the other companies that I was researching was that I couldn't find a negative word said about them. I couldn't find a disgruntled former employee. I couldn't find anything negative about this company, and there's a reason for that. I found out later on that they have an agency that they utilize their services, and this agency goes throughout the internet and they scrub any negative things said or expressed about this company. So having learned that, I feel like kind of like I was cheated or lied to. So nonetheless, my experience wasn't horrible with this company. It was actually pretty good for the most part. The problem that I experienced while I was here, or while I was there, was that I felt like the company was just a little too nitpicky in my opinion. There a lot of nitpicking, a lot of pettiness, and a lot of micromanaging. And they will be the first ones to tell you when they hear that word, micromanaging, they're so on the defense and quick to say, no, we don't micromanage. We really try not to micromanage. But they do. They want to control every aspect of you being a driver. They want to mold you and shape you into this company driver. And I get it. I understand why they do some of the things that they do. Because unfortunately, one of the big reasons, unfortunately, even though we're all adults coming into this company, some people don't behave themselves. They don't conduct themselves as adults, or as an adult should. And so for those people, they need somebody constantly on top of them. They need the constant micromanaging. They need somebody questioning them about, well, why did you do this, or why did you do that? That's necessary for some people. But I think a good majority of us, we don't need that. We can manage ourselves. If we have a problem, you've created this huge support system for us. We can call in, we can talk to the DMs, we can talk to the planners, we can talk to the road captains, or we have other drivers we can reach out to and speak to about different things, ask different questions. So you've created that for us. And I personally appreciate having that backup. But I don't need you questioning me about every little thing I do. Number one, I'm an adult. I'm a grown woman. I don't need to tell you everything I do. As long as my load is going to make it to its destination on time, I've never missed a load. I've never been late for a load. So if I take a little extra time on my break, I'm doing it, number one, because I'm grown and I could do that. I don't have to tell you what I do all the time. And number two, because the time allows me to be able to take a longer break. If you send me a load and in that load it specifies the load has to be there on this particular day between these particular hours, and when I shut down at the end of the night, I see that I can take a longer break. I can be off more than 10 hours. Then more than likely I'm going to do that. Unless you express to me that this is some kind of hot load and it has to be there ASAP, if I see an opportunity, a window for me to be able to get more rest, I'm going to take that longer period of rest. So why are you calling me? Why are you asking me, well, why did you take a 15-hour break? Because I had the time. And again, because I'm grown. What do you mean, why did I take a 10-hour break or a 15-hour break? Because I could. Simple answer. Because I could. Now, if you had some other plans, like I said, if this was some emergency load and it needed to be there first thing in the morning or first thing by whatever hour, then you needed to communicate that. It was one of the problems that I have with this company is the communication with all the people that are working in the office, as thorough as they are with the notes, you being able to look things up on satellite and then see the building, see the street that you're gonna be on and all that kind of stuff. Them being specific about if this is a loaded trailer or empty trailer, if it's a drop-in hook, if it's a live load or live unload, with all of those specifics that you have in your notes and the constant emails and the constant phone calls. You would think somewhere in there, if this was some major priority, that I leave at the very end of my 10-hour break instead of being able to take a longer break, which the window indicates. Then you would think somebody would communicate that. Somebody would pick up a phone and say, hey, Sherry, I know the load shows that you have a window between X hour to X hour, but we really need you to get it there by such and such hour. Whole different ball game. I would have approached it differently, would have no problems, leaving directly after my 10-hour break. But if you don't communicate that to me, I have a lot of skills, yes. There are a lot of things that I'm able to do and do well, yes. But mind reading is not a gift that I've been granted, unfortunately. Wasn't born with that gift, have not learned how to develop that gift. Yeah. So if you don't communicate that, how do you expect me to know that you want me to get it there sooner than soon? Right. So that was one of the issues that I had with this company. Aside from that, from the day I started being solo on the road. No, actually, I'll take it a few steps back. As I was going through training, when I first started with this company, as I was going through training, of course, I'm new at trucking. Being with that company was my very first year, very first time ever being behind the wheel of a semi-truck and having the responsibility of operating this vehicle safely, getting it from A to B and B to C and C to D, on time and efficiently and, like I said, safely. So with me being a new driver, new to the industry, in my mind, now this may not be how the company or companies, all of these trucking companies think, but in my mind, if I were a trucking company and I'm hiring people who are fresh out of school, fresh off the street, have zero experience truck driving, I would expect that there's going to be some boo-boos here and there. There's going to be some little incidents here and there. And I would allot for that. I would plan for that. I would prepare for that. That's why you have insurance. That's why you have all of these other things set up. Well, in my opinion, I had a number of incidents. No accidents, nothing major. The truck was never, majorly damaged. Nobody was ever hit. I never hit a customer's property. I never backed into something and tore up one of the trailers. None of that. Never went under a low bridge and ripped off the top of the trailer. Nothing. But I did have quite a few incidents along the way, starting from training. There was an incident in my trainer's truck, in her vehicle, where I almost backed into a cinder block, because as I was trying to come around and back into the dock, there were some cinder blocks along the side, along that curve that I was making. And I couldn't see them all. My trainer had gotten out of the truck, and I'm under the impression that she's watching what I'm doing and she's not going to let me hit anything. So as I'm coming around that curve, trying to straighten up so I can back into this dock, I came this close to backing into one of those cinder blocks. I didn't hit it, but I came that close. The only thing that happened was the airbag under my truck was pressed up against the cinder block. So when I pulled back out, it had little scratches on it, but they weren't deep. It was just little scratches on the underside of the airbag. So I was a little upset with my trainer because she's sitting on the cinder blocks watching me back up, and she didn't say anything until I was about to hit it. She jumped up and she's like, stop, 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 stop. So that was an incident. We had to report it. And they tell you in training, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, don't. But the whole time they're keeping track. They're keeping a record. They're keeping a score on you. Even though they're telling you, oh, don't worry about it, you know, everybody goes through this, oh, you're new, and they're still keeping a track record on you. This is what you don't know, and this is what they don't tell you. So that was an incident that I had in her truck. And then I had another incident in her truck where we were following the signs going to a fuel station, and the signs usually say trucks this way, cars that way, or RVs this way, trucks that way, or whatever. So we saw the sign that said trucks, and it was pointing in this direction. So where we turned in, because we're following that sign, it was misleading. It was where the rest of the cars and trucks and SUVs turned in. So once we got into, now my trainer's sitting right next to me, and she's seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. So once we got in there, we realized this isn't where the trucks turn in. So now I've got to try to make a U-turn in this tight space to go back out and then go into the next entrance. So as I was making that U-turn, because the turn was so tight, we have what they call extenders on the sides of the truck. And I cracked the extender on the side because it was too tight. The shop was able to repair it. All they did was put some rivets through it. But yeah, that was another incident. Not an accident, but another incident because the turn was so tight. I cracked the extenders. So yeah, again, they're telling me, oh, don't worry about it. Don't. It's not a big deal, you know, blah, blah, blah. But they're keeping track behind my back. They're still holding this against me. So once I got solo and I'm out here on the road by myself, the next incident was I'm going to a customer. This was somewhere in Texas. Going to a customer. I got there early because I'm usually early. I hate to be late. It's a pet peeve of mine. So I'm early. I'm probably about an hour early, 45 minutes, something like that. So I'm driving past this place. I'm looking for it because I'm in a residential area. All I see is houses on both sides of me, and I'm thinking to myself, are semi trucks supposed to be on this street? I mean, where is this place? The only thing I saw was a big gray industrial building off to the left, and it didn't have a name on it, didn't have an address on it, and it was surrounded by like an iron fence. So I'm thinking that's got to be it, because that's the only, everything else is houses. But there's no name on it, and there's no address that I could visibly see. And then this fence that goes around it is locked. I see the padlock on the fence. So I called my DM and I said, where is this place that I'm looking for? Because all I see is houses, and I see this one building, but I don't see a name on it, and there's no address. I'm like, am I at the right place or what? So she said, and I told her that the fence was closed, and she was like, well, that's probably because you're early. She said, you're going to have to find somewhere to go and park and then come back closer to the time that you're supposed to deliver. So that's what I did. Found somewhere to park, and then about 15 minutes before the time that I was supposed to deliver, I started heading back. So this time is like I'm coming up on the building. I see that the gate is unlocked. So I get over in the left lane so that I can make this left turn into this gated area. Well, as soon as I had an opportunity to turn, I'm turning. And as I'm in this turn, I just happened to see on the side of that little opening of the fence some numbers. And the number said 820. Well, that wasn't the address that I was supposed to be going to. So now I'm in the turn. I can't stop. I can't back up. I got traffic behind me. So I went ahead and I made the turn and I went inside this gate. And so it's a long driveway going up. So I'm like, okay, I can see the docks from where I am. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's some way that once I get to the back of this, it'll come around and bring me back to the docks, bring me back to where the docks are. Well, as I went further, I look off to my left and I see parked cars. So there's a parking lot back here, and there's no opening or exit on the backside where I can get over to these docks. And so apparently this was an apartment building, and that was the parking for the apartments. So I couldn't get a semi truck through there. So now I'm thinking, okay, now I'm gonna have to back this truck out of here and figure out where this entrance is to this place. Problem is, I was gonna have to back out into traffic. And I can't see my back end if I'm driving the front. So as I started backing the truck up and got closer to that fence, I noticed off to my right, there's this big open field of grass and like scraps of stuff that people that live in the building have just thrown out there, like a dumping area. So I said, okay, I could turn around there. That looks like it's enough space for me to be able to make a U-turn. What I did not know was, even though the ground appeared dry, what I didn't know was that Texas in that area had 2 days of torrential rains in that area. So the surface was dry, but it was still wet underneath. So as soon as I started making that U-turn across this grass, my truck got stuck in the mud and I couldn't get out. So some of the residents came out and they were trying to help me. They were trying to put like broken pieces of pottery and some old rugs and all of that to try to give me traction underneath my tires, but they wouldn't move and I was just digging myself deeper in the mud. So I had to call my company and they came out or they sent a tow truck out to pull me out. So again, no damage to the truck. Nobody was hit. Nobody was hurt. No damage to the property. Okay, yeah, the grassy area was muddied up because of the tire tracks. But yeah, so this is another incident that they're writing down on me, and that they're holding against me. So they called me in to have a meeting about that. And in the meeting, they gave me a warning, and they're like, oh, you know, next time get out and test the ground. Get out and test the ground. Didn't I say the surface was dry? The surface was dry. So even if I got out and patted my foot on the ground, how was I to know that it was wet underneath? Was I supposed to dig it up? Anyway, in this business, you will come to learn, and these are one of the other things that you have to consider if you're thinking about getting into trucking. No matter what you do, it's always going to be the driver's fault. Always. No matter what your defense, no matter what your evidence, no matter what your argument, it's always going to fall back on the driver. Every company is looking for a way to wipe their hands and be clean of any situation. If they could put it on you, yeah. So they held that against me. Next incident, if I can remember, trying to remember, I cracked the extenders on my new truck, making a tight turn again at another customer location, because when I went in there, the security guard told me to go to one dock. So I went to that dock. Nobody was at that dock. I'm ringing the doorbell. I'm knocking on the door. Nobody's coming in. I noticed there was a sign there that said all deliveries to this dock are now moved to another dock. So I went and I told the security guard what was on the door, and he's like, oh, well, you're gonna have to make a U-turn. You're gonna have to turn right here and then go. And it was a tight space for a truck, and I'm like, are you serious? So wound up cracking my extender again, making this tight turn. Called the company, and then the thing that irritated me even more than cracking the extender was I got to the other dock, and then they said, no, you're not docking here. You got to dock back there. The same place I just came from, they're now sending me back to. And so I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, where am I going? Can somebody tell me for certain where the heck am I going? Because I've already broken off my extender, trying to make this U-turn to come down here and dock. And now you guys are sending me back? And so once I got to that other dock, because of where I was coming from, there was no space for me to turn around in that space without making another tight turn. But I saw a truck coming from a different area, and I was like, okay, maybe there's some turnaround space back there. So I went back that way, and yeah, it was some space back there. Not much more, but it was a little bit bigger than that space. So I was able to make a U-turn, come back, and then back into the dock, and finally they got me together. But yeah, if they knew where I was going from the beginning, I would not have had to make that tight turn. So when I called my company, I explained everything to them, and they were like, oh, okay, we're not gonna hold it against you. But of course they did. Because it wasn't your fault. They weren't sure. Sounds like they were kind of confused as to where you were supposed to go. So, we're not going to hold this against you. But they took 40 points from me. This company has a point system that can work against you or work for you. And I really think their point system is created again to mold you and to shape you, and in a way punish you into becoming a company driver. Their cookie cutter makeshift idea of the kind of drivers that they want you to be. Where you're constantly on eggshells, where you're constantly checking your speed. You're not going over 63 miles an hour, where you're constantly, checking this and checking that and making sure that you're not accelerating too fast or stopping too fast, or, all of these little checks that they have on this list that they want you to do while you're performing the operation of these vehicles. I can't work like that. I'm sorry. I'm not a dog. You can't train me in such ways. I'm not a horse. You're not going to break me into becoming a company driver. How I drive is how I drive. I'm a safe driver. I've always been a safe driver. Number one, I'm inside this vehicle. So I'm not going to let anything happen to me. So if I'm not going to let anything happen to me, I'm not going to let anything happen to your truck or your load. Like I said, I've never not made a delivery. I've never been late on a delivery. All of my deliveries have gotten to their destination safe and sound. The load has never shifted. Nothing has ever fallen over. Nothing has been, a complete catastrophe in the back of the trailer. But you can't tell me how to drive. I'm sorry. You can't whip me and mold me into what you want me to be behind the wheel of this vehicle. I have to operate the way I operate in order to make it there safely. Call me rebellious, call me what you will, but that's just, yeah. So we were bumping heads in that area, I guess, because they were constantly taking points from me because of these little incidents, little things that in my mind really don't amount to nothing serious. So why y'all tripping so hard? I don't know. Then another incident that happened was they sent me to a customer that happened to be in the middle of nowhere. And by the time I got to this customer, either got loaded or unloaded, I probably had about 2.5 hours left on my clock. So after leaving the customer, I had to drive through all of these little itty bitty towns that just had like mom and pop shops. No truck stops for at least 200 miles. At least. And so as I'm looking for a place to park, I'm looking at my Garmin, it's telling me nothing. I'm looking at some of the other avenues that I have to find parking. I'm seeing nothing. I'm seeing nothing for miles and miles. And as I'm driving, like I say, these are little bitty towns in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing out here. So I had about an hour left on my clock. So I called dispatch. And they're always wanting to first address, did your trip plan? You guys knew how much time I had on my clock when you sent me out here. And if this is a regular load for you, you know that there's nothing around here. There is no parking around here. So what kind of trip planning could I have possibly done in this situation? So the DM says, I guess they have some kind of satellite view or something from where they are. They're looking at, what's in that area. And he says to me, I don't see anything. Wow, isn't that something? But you're questioning me about my trip planning, but you don't even see anything. Okay. So he's like, yeah, I don't see anything. I said, yeah, that's the problem. That's why I'm calling you. And so he's like, so then he tells me if I keep going on the road that I'm on, that I should come up on a Walmart and possibly I could park there. Not definitely, but possibly I could park there. Then he says there's some kind of hotel. If the Walmart doesn't work out, he's like, there's some kind of hotel or something. So I'm driving. Never saw this hotel that he was talking about. Never ran across it. And if I did, it went by so fast, it was like a blip. But I did come across the Walmart. And the parking lot was so small, and it was so packed with cars and trucks and SUVs. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get this truck in here. This is another thing that you have to consider when you're on the road, if you're thinking about becoming a truck driver. These roads are not made for trucks. These companies, these customers, these stores, these towns, they're not made for semi-trucks. So a lot of times if you miss your exit or you miss your turn or whatever, you might have to drive several miles just to find a place to turn around. I remember an occasion where I had to drive 10 miles down the road just to find a place where I could turn around and go back, because these places are not made, they're not designed for semi trucks. And a lot of these fuel stations do not have truck parking. So parking is a huge issue for truck drivers. Huge issue. So yeah, there was no room in this Walmart for me to get in there. This isn't a Honda. It's a semi truck with a 53-foot trailer. I can't just maneuver into any spot like that. So yeah, didn't see a way to get in there. So I just kept driving, and I'm praying, and I'm like, Lord, provide something. I need a parking spot. I'm running out of time here. Don't want to go into violation. So as I'm driving, I come across this strip mall. And the reason the strip mall caught my eye is because there were 3 box trucks parked in that parking lot. And so my immediate thought was, okay, there's some trucks. If those trucks are in this parking lot, then it's probably okay for me to park there. So as I'm coming to the entrance of this strip mall, I'm looking around, I'm scanning the area, I'm looking for any signs that say no semi trucks, no parking, no overnight parking. I see nothing. So I go into this parking lot and I intentionally drive around the entire lot. And I'm looking at every light post. I'm looking at every building, again, because I'm looking for any signs, any indications that I cannot park here. I saw nothing. I get around to the side, like the backside of the strip mall, and there's a sign there that says no semi parking here. But that sign made sense because right below that sign, all of the area, that parking area, the ground was all torn up, like they were doing construction in that area. So it made sense that a sign was there. So I was like, okay, well, I can't park there. Let me go around back to the front where I saw those 3 box trucks, and I'll park there. So I parked directly in front of them, right across the aisle from them. And I sat there intentionally for about 30 minutes. Waiting to see if somebody was going to come over and say, hey, you can't park that truck there. Hey, there's no overnight parking here, or anything. Nobody said anything to me. There was a Dollar General in that strip mall directly to my right. So eventually I got out of my truck. I went inside the Dollar General, bought a few things, walked around, and I'm waiting for somebody, a supervisor or somebody, to say, hey, you can't park your truck there. There's no overnight truck parking. No semi trucks can park here, or something. Nobody said anything to me. So I got back in my truck, and again, I'm sitting in the driver's seat intentionally for at least another 30 minutes to see if somebody is going to come over and say, hey, you can't park there. Nobody said anything. So after a while, I figured it was okay. I shut down, closed my curtains, went to sleep. Well, I had about 2 hours left on my clock before my 10 hours would have been up and I would have been out of there, when all of a sudden I hear doors closing outside. And my first thought is, who is this? Because the mall is closed. It's been closed for hours and nobody should be here. So I peek over my curtains in the front and I see these 2 headlights, and it's not a police car. It's just somebody in a pickup truck. So I'm like, what the crap? Who is this? So then I sit down in the driver's seat and I slide the curtains back and I look out the side of my truck. and I see these two guys on the side of my trailer stooping down, bending down, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, are they trying to rob me? What is this? So one of the guys stands up and he starts walking towards the front of the truck. He didn't see me sitting in the driver's seat. So he knocks on my door. And then finally he looks up and he sees me. He's like, oh. And so he hands me this business card. And he says, you need to call this number. He's like, this is private property. He says, we just put a boot on your trailer. I said, are you serious? I said, I can move the truck. And he's like, no, you know, we put it on there now, and you got to call this number to get it off. And he says, the tow truck is on the way. So I'm like, are you freaking serious? I said, I drove around this parking lot. I said there were no signs that said I couldn't park here. I said there were no signs when I came in. There were no signs when I drove all around this parking lot except for the one in the back. And so he says, yeah, we have 3 other entrances. He said, we have signs posted at all of the entrances. I said, no, you don't. I said, because the entrance that I came in, which ironically was the only entrance out of the 4 entrances that a semi truck could get through. That one didn't have a sign. So when I finished talking with these guys, I walked around the parking lot to find these other 3 entrances they were talking about. And sure enough, there was a sign posted at each one of those, but there wasn't a sign at the one that I came in. So immediately I said this was intentional. They've done this before. This is a scam. This is them setting up truck drivers. And so I had to call my company, and they paid for them to take the boot off. It was $3,000. $3,000 for them to take a cable. It wasn't a boot. It was just a cable strung between the 2 rear tires. If those guys weren't standing there, I would have cut that off and kept going. And then when I walked around to check out the other 3 entrances, at the one entrance off to my left, there were 2 police cars sitting around the corner. So they were all in on it. They were all in on it. And they waited until 1 o'clock in the morning, until they thought I was good and sleep, to come and do that. So the company made me pay that $3,000 back. They took points from me. Now, when they take points from you, this affects your pay, of course. It lowers your cent per mile when they take points from you. So it's a way for the company to make even more money off of the driver by paying them less for the job that they do. Every time they make a mistake, every time there's an incident and they give you points, that lowers your pay and it puts more money in their pocket. So like I said, it's a way for them to kind of punish you into not making mistakes. And I'm like, yeah. So again, they want to lecture you about the trip planning. Well, did you trip plan? You know, so they called me in to have a meeting about the boot on the truck. So they gave me another warning. This time it was written. Gave me a written warning on that situation. So then the incident that happened after that, I am following my GPS. I'm going to a new Uline location that I hadn't been to before, and this was not in Wisconsin, because there's a couple of Ulines in Wisconsin, but I'm going to a different Uline location, and I'm following my GPS, and I've got my Garmin lined up with the same address for the customer, because I like to compare them. So just in case my tablet's navigation is acting up, I have my Garmin as a backup. So I look at both of them, and they both say make a right turn in 400 feet. So as I'm coming up to this corner, you know how the turning lane has the little dotted lines to indicate that this is a turning lane, either left or right? So I'm coming up on that. So I'm getting over to my right, because the Garmin and the tablet say make a right turn in 400 feet. So by the time I get to the end of that corner, I glanced at both of them again, and they both said 0 feet, meaning this is where I'm supposed to make my right turn. But when I looked over to my right, I'm saying to myself, it doesn't look like this is where trucks are supposed to turn. This is very narrow, and it's going downhill. It's like an S curve downhill. So I'm like, for some reason, this doesn't look right. But this is where they're both saying I'm supposed to make this turn. So because this space looks so narrow, I kept my eyes on the nose of my truck, because I didn't want to hit anything. Well, because I was focused on the front of my truck, what I missed was there were 2 yellow poles on either side of this where you turn into. And on those yellow poles, there were yellow cylinders, and 12 feet had been painted on those cylinders. So these were an indicator that the height was 12 feet. Totally missed those. Totally missed them. Did not see them, because I'm focused on the nose of my truck and making sure I don't hit anything going into this little narrow space. I did hear something roll over the top of my trailer, but it wasn't a problem for me going in there. Truck went right up under them. So I'm going down this S curve decline, and I'm seeing the docks over to my left, and I'm looking at this road as I'm going forward, and I'm seeing this black chain link fence as I'm coming down that decline. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's a fence there. So does it open up somewhere for trucks to go through? So I get down to the bottom of this, and I'm seeing parked cars inside this chain link fence. So I stopped the truck just outside the fence, and I got out and I walked into the parking lot, and I'm like, am I supposed to drive through this parking lot? Is there an exit on the back side? So my eyes are physically following the chain link fence, because I'm looking for an entrance or exit in the back that'll lead over to the docks. I'm staring at the docks. The docks are right there. So then I realized there is no opening in this fence. There is no way for me to drive through here. So now I've got to try to back this truck up again. And not only back it up, I've got to back it up uphill, backwards, and in an S curve. I'm like, oh my gosh. So because these trucks, their air system, air tanks, or however the system is set up, backing up uphill is a problem. So what I had to do was back up a couple of feet, then I would have to apply the brakes, let the system air up again, then take the brakes off, back up a few more feet, then reapply the brakes, the reapply the brakes, and then wait for it to air up again. So I had to do this so many times. And the guys over on the dock could clearly see me. And so I guess somebody from the dock decided to come over to where I was. They drove over to where I was, because I made it eventually back up this hill, and I was just at the top where I was just feet from backing out into the traffic. And that's when I noticed those poles. I was like, oh my goodness. I went right under those. But I got out one last time before I was getting ready to back out into traffic, and I assessed the angles of my truck. I assessed those two poles standing there. I wanted to make sure that once I started backing out into traffic, I wasn't going to hit anything. So from my viewpoint, I was clear. I was at a good angle where I wouldn't hit anything, wouldn't hit the curb, wouldn't hit the poles, wouldn't hit anything. I would clear everything. And so as I'm coming around the side of the passenger side, some guy is standing there with his camera, and he's taking pictures of my truck. And I looked at him and I said, can I help you? And he said, yeah, the last time this happened, the truck had to be towed out of here. And I said, the last time? I said, so this has happened before? And he was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I wasn't the only one that made that turn. There's lots of trucks that have made that same turn. So I told him, I said, I don't need to be towed. I said, I could back this truck out of here. I said, I just need somebody to stop the traffic. And so he said, okay, I'm sorry, I'm hearing voices. I'm at a truck stop. I'm at a Love's. My truck is broken down until Monday. They've ordered the part. And I just saw one of the mechanics and another guy walk along the side of my truck. So I guess they're looking at it. Anyway, so the guy says he'll block the traffic. Okay. So that was great news for me, because I was nervous about trying to back into traffic. I can't see behind me, but that was the only way out. So I take one last look at my trailer, the back end specifically, because I wanted to make sure I was going to be clear of everything. And so he says, oh, don't worry about it. You're at a good angle. Just back out. Just back out. I said, okay. So I jumped in my truck and started backing it out slow. Well, by the time the front of my truck reached the pole that was on the left of me, I look out my mirror, and the little cylinder thing that had 12 feet on it is laying on the ground. And I'm like, what the crap? I was clear of everything. How the heck did I hit that? What I assumed happened was it probably got snagged on the back of my trailer, and me backing up just pulled it out. So it wasn't broken. The pole, the metal pole that it was attached to, had bent a little bit, and that was probably from the truck pulling on the cylinder that was hanging from two chains. So that cylinder probably got snagged on the back of my trailer, and I pulled it out of place. And so it was laying on the ground next to my truck. And so another guy pulls up in a truck, in a pickup truck, and he's like, did you get pictures? He's talking to the first guy. He's like, did you take pictures? Did you get it? And so they're telling me, when you get to your customer, just tell them what happened, and, call your company and blah, blah, blah. I said, fine. So I did everything that he said to do. Got unloaded at that customer. On my way out, I stopped and I took pictures. I had already called my DM, and they connected me with safety and all of that. And so I took pictures of the pole, the thing laying on the ground, and sent those to safety. Well, of course, that was another issue. They called me in for another meeting and gave me a final warning that if I had any more incidents, that it could lead to termination. They didn't say they were going to terminate me, but they said it could lead up to termination. So I said, okay, fine. Now, mind you, all these meetings that we've had, all of these write-ups, I guess, that they've given me, I haven't signed any of them. None of them. I refuse to sign them. Like I said, this, in my eyes, it's my first year of driving. First year of driving. Like I said, no major catastrophes, no collisions, nobody's been killed, no property damage other than this little pole thing and like I say, the grass. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So they wanted me to be incident free for a year. For a year. And then after a year, if I hadn't had any more incidents, then they were going to like wipe the slate clean and it was going to be a fresh start. I said, okay. So the last incident that happened that ended this whole affair was I picked up a trailer at Morton, in Morton, Illinois, at the Caterpillar. And once I attached to this trailer, when I did the pre-trip inspection on this trailer, I noticed that one of the mud flaps was touching the ground. And that's a DOT violation. The cop could pull you over and write you a ticket and all that kind of stuff. So I called my company right away, told them the situation, and ironically, this was the third time I had picked up a trailer in the last week or week and a half. This was the third trailer that had the same situation where the mud flap was touching the ground, and it was always on the passenger side. The frame was bent somehow that holds the mud flap, and that's why it was touching the ground. So called my DM, or no, I called the maintenance department, the breakdown department, and the guy that is assigned to me told me just to bring the trailer into the terminal, because the terminal was only like 35 miles from Morton. So he told me to bring it into the terminal and they would fix it there because it was on the way to my next customer where I was dropping that trailer or getting unloaded. So I went in, took the trailer in. They wanted me to drop the trailer in the bay. So I did that, and I went and parked on the bobtail line at our terminal. Once they fixed the trailer, the mud flap, I reattached to the trailer, and then I pulled out and I drove. That was a drive day for me. I wasn't delivering on that day. That whole day was a drive day. Now, what had happened was, some of our trailers have what they call extenders on the back of the trailer. And these extenders are supposed to help the truck or the trailer be more aerodynamic. It's supposed to save on fuel and all of that. Some of our trailers had them, some of them did not. And they were all supposed to be removed. They were phasing them out because they realized they really didn't work like they were supposed to. So they were in the process of taking these extenders off of all of the trailers. Well, some of the trailers still had them. Matter of fact, a lot of the trailers still had them. Because I guess it's a slow process and they can't get to it as soon as they'd like. But yeah, they started the process. They just haven't gotten to all the trailers. Anywho, so this trailer that I picked up at Morton had the extenders on the back, but I didn't open them. I stopped opening them very early on in my career with this particular company because at times they would be very hard to close. I don't know if it was a mechanical issue or if they were just old or they were damaged in some kind of way, but sometimes those extenders were extremely hard to close, and I didn't need that headache at a customer. Once I get to the customer and I'm backing up to the dock and I got to close these extenders so I can open my doors so that I can back up to the dock, if I can't get those extenders closed, I can't open my doors. So I stop opening them altogether. I just leave them closed, which is not a problem. The DOT isn't going to pull you over and be like, why aren't your extenders open? So I would leave them closed. So when I pulled into my terminal, those extenders were closed. However, when I left the terminal, those extenders were open. And I had no idea they were open because nobody informed me that they were open. The service department opened them at some point. And yeah, didn't tell me. So when I got to my truck stop that evening and I was attempting to park this doggone truck, backing into a parking spot, number one, the truck stop itself was full. They only had maybe 2, 3 at the most open spots. And unfortunately, they were all in the same general area, which was right in front of their service building where they repair trucks and change tires and all that kind of stuff. So the side of the building was facing these parking spots. And so it wasn't a whole lot of space to swing your truck around to back it into the space. But I attempted it. I tried to get in this spot, and for some reason I just couldn't get it in there. And I stayed close to the truck on my left. That way I knew that I wouldn't be anywhere near touching the truck on my right. Okay? Because that's my blind side. I can't see what's happening on that side. I know if I stay close to the truck on my left, there's no reason why I should touch the truck on my right. So as I kept attempting to back into the spot, it just wasn't enough space in front of me for me to swing the truck in. A couple of times that I backed up, I heard somebody blow their horn. I don't know if it was the truck on the left or the truck on the right that blew their horn, which said to me that I was getting close to their truck. So I immediately stopped, pulled forward, repositioned myself, and tried backing in again. So I only heard, in all the attempts that I made, and I probably made about 10 attempts to try to get into that spot. In all of the attempts that I made, I only heard them blow the horn twice. Now, nobody came to me and said anything. Nobody got out of their truck, ran up to me and said anything. I stopped the attempt to get into that parking spot because I realized it was just too tight. It was too small, too tight. I couldn't get in there. So I got frustrated and I pulled out of the spot and I drove around the fuel island and came through the fuel island. And when I came through the fuel island, I was now facing the place where I was trying to back into, right? And I saw that another truck had come and he was backing into the spot that I was trying to get into. And I'm like, ain't this about nothing? So I pulled out of the spot because I said to myself, let me try to find another truck stop. Hopefully they have more parking spaces. I still had enough time on my clock to find another parking spot. So I said, let me just go to another truck stop that might be a little bit easier. So that's why I left. Wasn't that I was trying to run from anything or avoid anything. I left because I got frustrated because I couldn't get in that parking spot, and I said, let me try to find something easier. So about 6-7 miles down the road, there was a TA that had plenty of parking spots. So I was able to get a parking spot, no problem. Parked there for the night, got up the next day, kept going to my customer, made my delivery, all of that. So I didn't think there was a problem. I get a call from safety about a week after that. And the lady says, yeah, I was just calling to follow up with she said, I was just calling to follow up. And I said, follow up with what? And she was like, oh yeah, somebody reported that you hit their truck. What? I hit somebody's truck? I said, I didn't hit anybody's truck. Whose truck did I hit? And when? When was this supposed to be? And so she says, oh, do you remember last week you were trying to get into a pilot? And I immediately thought about that because that's the only one that I struggled to get into. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, yeah, well, you backed into this guy's truck. And I was like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? Because I don't recall hitting anything. Like, I didn't feel a jerk or like the truck didn't come to a stop because I backed into something solid. What are you talking about? I didn't hit anybody. I was too close to the guy on my left to ever have touched the guy on my right. What are you talking about? And so she's like, yeah, they said that you backed into their truck and there's not any major damage. There's just some scratches on his mirror and on the hood of his truck. And I'm like, again, I'm in denial. I'm like, what are you talking about, lady? What? And so she's like, yeah, we're working with his company and the insurance company and, this, that, and the other. They were sending over a video and pictures. So when she sent me the video, that's when it all made sense. What had happened was my company, like I said, when I left that day with that trailer, they had opened those extenders and they didn't inform me. So when I was trying to back into that spot, at some point, one of those attempts, I must have backed into this gentleman on the right of me, his truck, with those extenders. The extenders are what hit his truck. It wasn't my trailer. It was the extenders. So I was like, oh, yeah. So, and she asked me, she was like, do you always leave your extenders open when you back into a parking spot? I said, I didn't know they were open. I said, no, I don't. I said, if I know that they're open, of course I'm going to get out of my truck and close them first. But I didn't know they were open. Nobody told me that they opened them. And so she was like, oh, okay. And of course they went back and looked at the video of me at the terminal and saw that the technician opened. What he said was, when I backed into that truck, when I reattached to that trailer, the extenders were closed. But as I was preparing to leave, one of the service guys came over and was behind my trailer opening the extenders. And he said, I pulled off while he was opening the extenders. So that tells you, I didn't know those doggone extenders were open. I didn't even know the guy was back there. But you still are going to hold this against me because everything is the driver's fault. Everything is the driver's fault. Whether you know or you don't know, it's still your fault. So yeah, that was the last straw. That's what brought all of this to a crashing end, unfortunately, because like I said, they had given me a final warning 4 months prior, and they were hoping that I would not have any more incidents for at least a year. And then this happened. And so they decided to part ways, and I was okay with that. I was okay with that because I just, like I said, I still think it's a pretty good company, but I think, and I said this to the guy in the meeting because I wasn't going to say anything. I expected them to let me go. I had already cleaned out my truck the night before. They didn't know that. I expected them to let me go. And originally, as soon as he started talking, I had planned to cut him off and tell him, you don't have to go into any long speech, no explanations, none of that. What's the next step? What happens now? What are you guys going to do? All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity. There's nothing for us to talk about. You've already made your decision. We've already had this conversation. I was already expecting this. So why do we have to have a meeting? Why do we have to have another conversation? We ain't got to talk about nothing. Give me my papers. Tell me what the next instruction is. Peace. But then I thought about it and I said, no, don't be that way, Sherry. Don't be that way. Just be quiet and listen. So I did that. I went into the meeting with that mindset. I was just going to listen to what they had to say. And I kept quiet up to a point. When he said that the reason that this was their explanation for why they chose to part ways rather than giving me another opportunity, even though they knew that this incident was not my fault because I wasn't informed. I didn't know that the extenders were open. They could have said, you know what, you didn't know. All right, we'll give you another shot. But they chose to part ways, and the reason that they gave for parting ways, and the thing that prompted me to speak up at that point, was they told me that they felt like I hadn't made any improvements, that I hadn't changed from the previous conversation. And I'm sorry, but I said, and what brings you to that conclusion? What about this incident brought you to that revelation? How do you know I haven't changed? How do you know there's been no improvement? Do you ride with me every day? Are you inside my head? What are you talking about? And so he says, well, you know, part of my job is, he's like, first he acknowledged that I was right. He was like, yeah, actually, you're right. He was like, you know, the two things don't have anything to do with each other. So then what are we talking about? What's your real reason? Let's be honest. What's your real reason? So he says part of his job as the big boss in safety is to interview other people in the office. And I don't know who he talked to, but I have a feeling one of the big influences in this was the safety lady that made that call to me. Because in the very first meeting, very first incident that I had, she was in that meeting, and there were some other people in the office, big wigs, in this meeting. And I checked her in front of them because I didn't like her approach. I didn't like her accusatory nature, and she was wrong. in what she was presenting. And so I think from that point on, and I could be completely off on this, but this is just my gut feeling. I think she had it in for me from that day forward. I didn't care for her too much. She's a young girl in her 20s, I guess, trying to make a name for herself. And she knows nothing about trucking. She's never driven a truck, but somehow she's in safety, and she is cutthroat. She is no nonsense. She is all about the book. Yeah. One of those personalities that has no personality. And yeah, I don't think she appreciated that not only do I speak my mind, not only do I tell you the truth, but I don't care who you are. I don't care what position you're in. I don't care who you think you are. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to say what I have to say. Like it, love it, hate it, it is what it is. And so I think she was probably embarrassed. And yeah, so I think she had it in for me ever since then. Because every little thing I did, she was calling me, questioning me. Well, did you? Well, did it? Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I think the other culprit probably was my driver manager. You know, she has this very little baby voice. She's always, you know, kind. She comes across, you know, sweet and all of that, but she's very company. And I said that to somebody early on who came into the company. I'm like, don't let that baby voice and the, you know, soft demeanor fool you. She's very company. There were some things that were told to me about her by some people who work there. And so, yeah, I think she may have had some input in what transpired. Yeah. And it's all good. I don't hold any ill will against either one of them. I just know what I know. Just know what I know, and it is what it is. So I don't have any, like I said, ill will towards the company or anybody who works there. One of the things that the big boss in safety said in the meeting is that every company isn't for everyone. And I thought this company was going to be the company for me. I started finding out as time went on that maybe not. They're just, like I say, too nitpicky, too petty, and too much micromanaging for me, for my style, for my taste. I need a little more freedom. I need a company that's not going to be constantly asking me what I'm doing, constantly breathing down my neck. I'm a grown woman, and I'm a woman of integrity. So I'm always going to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So you ain't got to check up on me. You don't have to keep calling me. You don't have to keep sending me these emails. You don't have to. I'm not a baby. I don't need to be babysat. So that was a problem for me. And not all companies are this way. The company that I'm with now seems to be a lot more laid back. However, they're big on communication. Oh my gosh, the phone calls are ridiculous. They want to keep track of you and make sure you're okay 24 hours a day. It's, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to call you. You don't need to call me. Yeah, they're big on that. But they don't question you about why did you take a 15-hour break. They don't question you about why did you stop to use the bathroom. They don't question you about, you know, why we see that you were sitting on the road for 5 minutes. I needed to look at my directions. Do I need to call you about that? I mean, why are you calling me asking me stuff like this? You know, just silly stuff to me. Yeah. So I was disappointed, if anything else. I wasn't hurt by the separation. I was disappointed. And the one thing that I said to this guy in this meeting was that I feel like there wasn't enough grace for new people, new drivers. I said I can understand if I had been in the industry for 5 years or 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and was making these mistakes. I said, but I'm a brand new freaking driver to driving and to the industry. If I were a company, if I had a company, and I'm opening the doors to brand new drivers, and I guess that's why some companies, when you go to look at their application, they request that you have a year of experience, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years before they will bring you into their company. Well, if you're a company that's allowing people to come in fresh from truck driving school or with 6 months of experience, I would think that you would expect that there's going to be some boo-boos along the way. There's going to be some mistakes made. I told them, I said, I'm sorry I couldn't give you perfection. I couldn't give you perfection. And they're like, oh, well, we're not expecting perfection. Well, I can't tell. I can't tell you weren't expecting perfection, because in my eyes, these little things shouldn't have been that big to the point that we're here now. Shouldn't have been that serious. Like I said, nobody was killed. No, I didn't have any crash, no collisions. You know, I didn't create any property damage, like I said, other than that pole. And I could have fixed that for $50. Give me a can of paint and a hammer. I could have fixed that myself. So I felt like there was not enough grace for new drivers. Everything we do is scrutinized. Everything we do is magnified. And I just feel like it's too much. You all are asking too much. You say you don't require perfection, but again, I can't tell. Because from what I see, there are drivers that have done much worse, but they're still at the companies that employed them. They're still working. But it is what it is. You know, this is your company. You write the rules, you know. And even with that, there were no policies. There, from my knowledge, from my understanding, through orientation, all the literature that they gave us, all the conversations that we've had, there's never been any policies or rules displayed anywhere in the company that said, you know, if you make this many minor mistakes, you know, we could terminate you. And I get it. They have the right to let people go whenever they feel like it. I get that too. But like I said, my problem is, or I felt like there just wasn't enough grace for new people. For new people coming into the industry, there just wasn't enough grace. Now, they can take that and do what they want with it. And, you know, he's like, you know, I appreciate you expressing that, and we're gonna, you know, work on trying to be better. Are you really? I seriously doubt it. But yeah, so that's my story. I am no longer with my previous company. I left there on October 16th. Well, actually, they let me go on the 16th. I didn't leave until the 17th. And so 20 days later, I am with this company. I'm with this new company, and so far so good. It hasn't been peaches and cream though. Like I said, they have some similarities to the previous company, but there's also some major differences, and some of the ways the other company operated I liked much better than this one. This company pays more. Initially, your starting pay is more than the previous company, and there's no forced dispatch. On the logs in the tablets at the previous company, once you start driving, you're locked out of that tablet. The only thing that you can access is the navigation, because it's directing you to where you go, but you can't go back and look at the notes, or you can't go back and look at certain things. You're locked out. With this company, they don't lock you out of the tablet. You have access to everything while you're driving, even though this is hands-free and they don't want you, excessively touching the screen. Yeah, you still have access. So if you know how to drive and get to what you need to get to on that screen without setting off the camera, you're good to go. What else about this company is different or better than the previous company? Their scorecard program. So far, from what I can tell, they don't punish you here if you make a mistake. They're not taking points from you. From what I understand so far, they're not. You can earn points towards rewards, but as far as them taking points from you and lowering your pay, they don't do that here. They don't do that here, which is fantastic. And then their scorecard program is much easier, and it's easier for you to make more money, to get good scores, and to make more money. They pay you up to an additional 6 cents per mile, depending on your scores. That's phenomenal. Do you know how long it would take you to make an extra 6 cents a mile at my previous company? Quite a while. Quite a while. But yeah. So the scorecard is different. It's easier. There's no forced dispatch. The pay per mile initially is more. I'm trying to think what else is different and better. I can't think of it right now. There's a few other things that are quite different and better with this company, but I can't think of them right now. But yeah, so this is my first week at this company, and it's been quite interesting. It's been very challenging, to say the least. Getting used to this new system, it's nothing like the previous system. I really feel spoiled by the other system. This one is lacking. It's not as good. But I'm getting used to it little by little, the more I play with it. So eventually, once I get used to this, it'll be better. But right now, it's a pain in the butt. And then I've had issues with the very first load, the very first night, I had to leave the customer location. I was supposed to do my 10-hour there, and about 3 hours into my 10-hour, we were told that we had to evacuate. We could not stay there, which meant that I had to try to find parking at 3 o'clock in the morning. So that was a bear, and it screwed up my schedule. yeah, it was a mess. And then now my truck is broken down at a Love's. So, and the part I got here, today is Sunday. I got here on Friday night to do my 10-hour. I got up yesterday to do my pre-trip, and I noticed that the pins on my fifth wheel are not coming out to lock the fifth wheel in place. And you can't drive around like that because there's movement, and the fifth wheel could shift while you're driving. So talked to dispatch. They told me there's a service department here at the Love's. So we checked in, and they looked at the truck and determined that they thought they had fixed it. Then they later determined that the cylinder, the air cylinder, needs to be replaced, and they don't have the part here, so they have to order it directly from Freightliner. And unfortunately, because I was here for 6 hours waiting through this whole process, Freightliner was about to close when they finally got the second authorization from my company to go ahead and replace the cylinder. And so we won't be able to get the part until Monday evening at 5 p.m. The part will be delivered. And so, yeah, I'm here waiting. And so I probably won't get back out on the road until Tuesday morning, hopefully extra early. I don't know what they're going to do with this load, if I'm still going to deliver it. They had another load set up for me after this one, so they're probably going to shift that around and give that to another driver. But yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm just happy to be back out on the road. I did miss it, but during that little 20-day break, I got so much done. I finally got my passport. I got a lot of work done at my house in preparation for moving the stuff out of there and into storage. Yeah, I made a lot of progress in those 20 days at home. So I feel real good about that. I feel much better about that. I needed that time to take care of things that I need to do because I'm on the road all the time. And I would have liked to have had a little bit more time, but at the same time, I didn't want my employment history to be long, or unemployment history to be very long. I wanted to start working right away, and I had actually considered getting out of trucking because initially I said that that company that I was at previously was going to be my first and last trucking company. I had no intentions on going anywhere else. And as you know, I had no plans to stay in trucking for a long time anyway. So I was looking actually at other things outside of trucking because having a CDL opens the door to so many other opportunities. So I was looking at some other avenues, other places to possibly go, other industries where I could use my CDL and wouldn't have the headache of driving a semi-truck and dealing with all of the DOT, the rules and the regulations, the nitpicking and the pettiness of some of these companies. Yeah, I really considered leaving trucking behind and maybe driving a school bus, or driving RVs or something other than this, driving a box truck, something smaller, something a little bit more manageable, to where I would never have to worry about parking or bridge heights and restricted roads. You can't go down this road, and all the things that come with trucking. So, but this company called me, and it's funny because their terminal is just up the road from the previous company's second terminal, and it's much closer to my house. I'd seen their trucks on the road, and I always thought that they were pretty. I liked the color of their trucks and trailers. And so who would have thought I'd be working for them now? So yeah, we're here, and this company is in the top 5 of trucking companies in the industry. So we shall see. I'm hearing good things about them. I'm hearing good things about them from other truckers. And so we shall see. We shall see. Anyway, guys, that's my story. I'm sticking with it. And if you guys have any questions, comments, or whatever, just leave them in the comment section and I will respond. All right, it's been 1 hour and 35 minutes. I didn't intend to make such a long video, but it's a lot. It's a lot. All right, guys, I will talk to you later on. You guys have a great day. Stay well, stay blessed, be safe out here on these roads, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye-bye for now.